Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to do a little bit of a recap regarding my Okeechobee tournament. I've released videos now on all three tournament days, but I haven't gone over the tackle. I haven't gone over kind of the process and walked you through what the tournament week was. And I've had a lot of viewers ask me for this. So I want to give you a little bit of a breakdown, walk you through the thought process and what was going on during that tournament that ultimately ended up in a good finish. We finished 18th overall, which is a great start to the year. We've got five tournaments left, so if we can have top 20s in them all, we will be where we want to go. All right, so let's get into this. Before I do want to remind you though that if you're looking for some additional content from me, check out my members only page. We do extra videos a month, a monthly live stream. You can have direct access to me. Also, if you need help on your local lakes, check out the lake breakdowns that I've done. There's a couple of hundred that are up there right now. We've covered most lakes, so you can check those out. They're based on the season. You get 40 waypoints, and I've gone through and hand selected all of those. And if it's a lake that I've fished before, like Okeechobee, you get the actual waypoints that I've used. So check that out. The link is in the video description. Now, I got to tell you, before heading to Okeechobee, I really had planned on flipping. Flipping is one of the things I love to do. I've had a lot of really good finishes on Okeechobee with a flipping stick. I just feel like I've got a good understanding of how that lake works, and I honestly was hoping to get a cold front right before because the cold front a lot of times will put those fish more in flipping areas versus being on the bed where they're out scattered around on flats, and it's more of a casting tournament at that point. And I thought we were going to get that. You know, the first day of practice, we had cooler temps, not super cool, but it was like 70 degrees. But we had extremely strong east winds, like 20 to 30 mile an hour sustained winds. And it really throttled the lake pretty good. I had a few bites. I think I had 6 bites that day. I actually ended up fishing in a creek, in a canal, because it was just too hard to fish on the main lake and you weren't being I wasn't being thorough, let's put it that way. And you couldn't really get around to cover a lot of ground. And a lot of times on Okeechobee, that's what it's about. It's about finding the areas that the fish are using. And even though everything looks the same, there is a ton of dead water out there. So the second day of practice, we had cool temps again, and it rained almost the entire day. And it just was really tough to get a bite. I had a handful of bites down in South Bay, which is where kind of the whole tournament seemed to have gone down. But I didn't have much going on. I had one area down there where I did get a bunch of bites that I thought were smaller caliber, and then I got some scattered ones out on the flats. And then on day three, I ended up going back up north to like the Monkey Box area, Harney Pond, Fish Eating Bay, Moonshine Bay, that general area. And I pulled up into this calm bay that looked like a spawning flat, and I had two really good bites on a topwater bait. The first one I thought was an absolute giant. The second one I figured was about a 4 pounder, and they were about 100 yards apart. So going into the tournament, that was the only area where I had seen a big fish during practice. So going into the tournament, I figured for day one, I would run to those fish, and then I was planning on running back to South Bay, where I felt like I could just fish around and generate some bites. Overall, the consensus was it was going to be a very difficult tournament. I think most people really struggled day one and two of practice. The third day, I think people started getting some bites, and that's kind of what keyed people into going into the areas they did. So for me, the day one, I ended up going to those two big fish. And it was funny because the first one I pulled up on, which was the really large fish that I saw in practice, I didn't get bit, but I did catch one that was like 2 3/4, and I assumed it was the male that was with the female. And I then proceeded to work my way to the other big bite I had. Now, mind you, I had no other bites in that area. By the time I got that 100 yards to the other fish, I think I had 7 legals in the boat, including one other 4 pounder, several other 2.5 pound class fish. And, at that point, I recognized really quick that a wave of fish had moved into that area. And I pretty much assumed it wasn't just my area. When that happens, they move in a lot of different areas. So I kind of figured the weights would be a lot better than what we were expecting. I then went and fished for the other big bite, and I ended up catching that one. It was roughly 4.25 pounds. I caught it on the spin rocket, and it kind of set me up to a good day. I think that fish put me around the 14 to 15 pound mark, and I spent the rest of the day trying to cull, and I never got another big bite. I was able to continue to cull like 2.5 pounders for like a 2.8 for a 2.9, a 2.10, just nice, decent quality males, but I never got another really big bite. So that was day one. Day two, then I went back to the same starting area. I started on the exact same stretch because, as we know in Florida, bass continue to go to the same spawning areas. And I quickly caught another limit, worked that area around pretty thoroughly. I had a limit for like 11 or 12 pounds, and at like 10 o'clock, I hit a little area where I caught a 4 or 4.25 pounder. I missed one that was an absolute giant on the top water, and then I ended up flipping up that one almost 7 pounds, and that shot me way up the leaderboard. I then left that area, went looking for a kind of new water. It was an area I had gotten bit, but I just went fishing new stuff, and at the end of the day, I did catch one that was like another 4 pounder, and that culled me up to almost 20 pounds and moved me up into 18th place. Day three, I didn't figure any reason to change the routine. I went back to the same area. Uh, Never got a big bite in there. I did get one that was about 3.5, and I left it with about 13 pounds. I was catching good quality fish, but not any of those big bites. And I left it and made a run to Fish Eating Bay and ended up catching one close to 5 at the end of the day, which really, secured me in 16.5-ish pounds. And I didn't drop, I didn't move up. I ended up finishing 18th. But the whole key to this tournament was keeping yourself in areas that you knew the fish were potentially coming to. I had one area that had more fish than others, but the key really was I didn't have any pressure. I had a couple other boats that were fishing in the same area that I kept bopping around in, but it wasn't like going to some of the community spots. So it was nice to be able to fish freely, cover water. I could fish slow if I wanted to and not feel rushed because I had boats on me or were moving to areas I wanted to go. But I gotta tell you, I had a bunch of rods on the deck, but 3 rods really did my damage, and it kind of changed from day to day. Day one, as you saw in the video, most of the weight all came on this prop bait. This is a Berkeley spin rocket. I keep hearing rumors that these are going to be discontinued, but they are phenomenal baits. So Berkeley, if you're listening, this needs to stay out there. It is a phenomenal bait, and it works. It's just a great functioning prop bait. A lot of times for me, prop baits, they just don't function right. You don't get good propeller movement. You don't get the right sound. This bait, based on how they've created the propellers, works phenomenally well. One of my favorite topwater baits, and it really shined in this tournament. It caught most of my weight day one. It caught, I'm going to say, half of my weigh-in fish on day two, and on day three, maybe I had one on it. But this was really good in the morning. It kind of died off a little bit as the sun got up, but it still was producing good bites. I had one massive bite on it that I would have loved to have caught. I set the hook, loaded up for a second, and the bait pulled out. So there was nothing that we could have done wrong on it. In this case, again, this is on a custom MHX blank that I build. This is the MB843. Perfect topwater rod, 7-foot, 3 power. Just great for precision casting and handling the fish. And then in this case, I've got it rigged up with a Revo MGX 8.0 to 1 reel. This is, one of my favorite reels. They don't make this one anymore. They stopped making it this past year, but it's a great reel. If you're looking for something similar, the Xenon X would be what I'd go with. And then I've got it rigged up with 17-pound Berkeley Trilene XL in the green color. I like monofilament. Straight mono is kind of how I like to fish most of my topwater baits, but really is a good presentation for those fish. And as you saw in the videos, they were just eating that bait entirely. So the next one that did the majority of the damage that the topwater didn't do was a relatively new bait to me. And that's right there. That's the Hybrid Hunter by Strike King. There's a little bit of a backstory here, but basically I didn't plan on fishing a crankbait when I got to Okeechobee. But it turned out to be so clean in these areas. There was no submerged grass. Not there was nothing from the hurricane in the dark water that I really felt like a crankbait could be a good player. And I had my roommate Chris Grow kind of was working big swim baits and having action, and he showed me a couple of the movements, and they were real wide wobbling baits. Well, I happened to have bought the hybrid hunter uh, for the last year for fishing at the Harris chain. I never made a cast with it. I've never made a cast with this until this Okeechobee event, and I was very much impressed. I'll do a separate video talking about it, but really what happened was it came through the cover that I was fishing very well, and the fish were eating it. This is the full-size one, and it was engulfed. I mean, I caught a pile of fish on this as well, and it just seemed to be the ideal bait for the presentation. And I don't think those Okeechobee fish see a crankbait much, but because there's really no grass there, you're able to fish it clean. And that thing dives only about a foot. That's the shallow runner. So I wasn't coming in bottom contact, which was key, because if you came in bottom contact, you'd get a bunch of filament. You wouldn't be able to work a crankbait. And then the last thing was the punch rig, which I thought I was going to be fishing. This is an ounce bait. I've got here a black and blue 4-inch Berkley Pit Boss. I really wanted to be putting this to work the entire time. I caught one weigh-in fish on it. I caught a couple of fish, but one weigh-in, and it was the biggest one I caught in the tournament, almost 7 pounds. It was just one of those things when I'd fish the top water or fish the crankbait, if I was in an area where I got bit, I would pick up this heavy weight and bounce around trying to catch a female that was holding under some of the hard lines or some of the isolated grass patches. And in this case, I caught that 7-pounder out of what, like an isolated island of, it was pennywort. So on this is the FP 936 MHX blank, 6 power, what is it, 930, so it's a 7.9 rod. It's just great for flipping. As you can see in the video, the rod has great taper. I've got it on an Abu Garcia Revo ALF. This is a discontinued reel as well. This is a 8.0 to 1 speed, so again, a faster speed. And I've got it rigged on that Gamakatsu ringed hook that I've done videos on. This is an 1.25 ounce tungsten weight, and I've got it with 65-pound Berkley X9 braided line. Overall, great setup. From a rod standpoint too, I do want to mention real quick, the Hybrid Hunter. I've got this on the MHX 873 blank. So this is a faster rod than I normally would fish a crankbait on. And that's for 2 reasons. So this is a 7.3 3-power fast action rod. The reason that I threw this on this blank versus what I would normally throw a crankbait is because I was really making very precise casts, and I'm much more accurate with a fast action graphite rod versus what I would normally use, like a CB 906 or CB 907, which is a blended rod. I get much better casting accuracy, and at the same time, I needed to turn those fish faster than I would with a blended rod. So because I've got more backbone on this rod, I was able to turn those fish and get them away from that heavier cover faster than I would if I was throwing that blended composite rod. So that's, to me, a big thing. This is 15-pound fluorocarbon, the 100% Berkley fluorocarbon. And then I've got it on another Revo MGX 8.0 to 1. And if you watch in the videos, that's a high-speed reel for a crankbait, a high gear ratio, but I wasn't using the handle at all to reel the bait in. I was using a sweep technique where I was just working the bait with the rod tip and then picking up line. So it worked out great. So that's my setup. These 3 baits weighed every fish that I caught. Not necessarily your traditional setup for fishing Lake Okeechobee, but it really worked well this week, and the fish were eating the prop bait and that crankbait extremely well. So there was no reason for me to change it. Once I figured that out, pretty much on day 1, I just ran with it the rest of the tournament. Ended up being a good finish. The goal of fishing the MLF Invitationals is to qualify for the BPT Tour. You got to be in the top 8 out of the 150 anglers. So to start the year off with an 18th is a very good finish. The goal, in my opinion, is you take 6 top 50s, and you're probably going to be right where you need to be. So right now, we got 1 down, 5 more to go. So thanks for watching. If you have any other questions regarding my setup, let me know in the comment section. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.